Okay, I'm going to talk with you a bit about what we do in setting up and running an election operation. I'm going to go through this at light speed. Don't worry, when you sign up for us on the training, we do have a much more in-depth session, so try to stay with me. I want to start with a very simple and very important set of words that I'm sure everyone in here has seen. As Edmund Burke said, all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing, good men and women to do nothing. The whole message that you're going to hear from us is get involved. This is your election, this is your process, this is your voice, guaranteed to you by your founders of this country. So critically important for everyone to get involved. What we talk about is we've taken the election process as we developed it and as we used it in Harris County, Texas. And by the way, when I talk about Harris County, Texas, that's 2 million registered voters. That's over 1,000 voting precincts. So it's a lot of people. It's a big operation when we talk about that. But first of all, let's talk about who works at the polls. And there's really two different types of individuals that you'll see. First of all, what we call election workers. These are generally individuals that are paid by the county, by the city, and they are there to administer the election. That's their role. You also have poll observers or election observers, the generic term that we use, who are most often volunteers. And they are there on behalf of normally parties or candidates. Their role is very simple, to be an independent observer and to make sure that the process follows the law. This is the key that we have found to being able to oversee and ensure that election integrity is upheld. It's the independent observer. It's the person that is standing there with a clipboard. We always liken this to driving down the road, looking up in your rearview mirror, and seeing a policeman behind you. What do? Everybody does the same thing. Am I going the right speed? Am I in the right lane? If someone is there watching, it helps you to do the right thing. The other thing I will tell you that we see is a lot of pressure in the polls from third parties to do things wrong. The people that are there will see the poll observers, the election observers, and they will say, I can't do the wrong thing because that person is taking down names. You give those people who know the right thing to do, you give them the cover to do the right thing. All of a sudden, it's not their fault, it's your fault. So bear in mind, we have found this to be very critical. In setting up an election process or election program, how can you help? Well, the first thing that I would say is you need volunteers, but you also need someone to lead those volunteers, someone that will coordinate. Now, we're going to tell you how to do it. We're going to be there throughout the process, but it is critically important that you be willing not only to volunteer, but to be a leader. Back up. Okay. We have a 5-part process. What does a leader do? First of all, you plan. You build local relationships. What do we mean by that? We mean that you go and you talk with the party officials, the election officials, and you say that we are here as a citizen initiative. We are here to make sure that the laws are followed. We're nonpartisan. We don't have a stake in this election other than we want to make sure that it works and it works according to the law. Learn your poll landscape. Everybody has a set of polls, and we look at them and we say, okay, where are the ones that we tend to have problems, number one, in terms of election fraud or election issues? Where are the ones that only one party works the polls? That happens. It's not supposed to happen, but it does happen. Where are those where the majority of the individuals that are in that given precinct, 85, 90%, we have a magic line in Texas at 85%, where most of the people are of one party or another. What happens is, if 85% of your people tend to vote one way, you want to make sure that the other 15 regardless of which party we're referring to, that other 15% feels that they can walk into the poll and they can express their views. So we go through and we prioritize. In Harris County, we're looking at 1,000 different locations, and we're going through and saying which ones do we want to make sure that we cover first. We then develop an election plan. How many people do we need? We set an objective that we always hope to achieve, that we're going to put at least 2 people in every polling location within our county. And that's what we ask people to set up as an objective. Not 1, but 2. Why? You need someone to corroborate what you find if you are there. And we would suggest, we would prefer to say, I'm going to only cover half of the locations, but have 2 at every location, rather than having 1 person by themselves. Very important. So you set the objectives. This is the plan that you put together. In a perfect world, you get all the volunteers that you want. Everybody comes, you fill all the locations, and your plan flanges out perfectly. In reality, that's not what happens. And that's why we say, prioritize your polls, start with those where you most likely have a problem, and fill those first. The second thing we do is mobilize. Recruit volunteers. Find people that are willing to serve. Continue these discussions at the local level, talking with your election administrators and your parties, and be sure that you contact the parties and candidates for poll observers to say, we are here to represent you. Because Florida, like many states, the way that someone gets appointed to actually work in a poll as an independent observer is on behalf of a party or on behalf of a candidate. That's who puts you in the poll. Not True the Vote, not your local organization, not you as a citizen. You are there as an independent observer appointed by a party or a candidate. Very important to remember that. The next thing that we do is we train. Now, Vicki talked about the training. I've been one of the trainers, and we've run out of time to be able to tell everybody everything. So we're going to a different method. It's been very effective in the tests that we've used. But you'll tend to have 2 different types of training. Generally, your county, your city, your state will approve a set of training for those people who are the election workers. Quite frankly, where we've looked at that training, sometimes it's barely adequate, and in other times it's worse than that. It's sad. It is really sad. We had a group of high school teachers that worked on developing our training, figuring that we'll put something together that people can understand. We have the True the Vote, what we call poll observer training, and the reason we call it that is it tells you the rules, it tells you what you can and can't do, but the third thing that's critical is it tells you how people beat the system. It tells you what to look for. And that's critical. The rest of the training that you have won't normally do that. It's generally a how-to. What's the process? How do I process a voter? How do I work the machines? That's generally what this training is that most people provide. What we try to step in is we try to say, here's where it's going to go off the rails. Here's where you're going to have a problem. After and as you train, the next thing you do is deploy. You go to the polls. Anyone who works under the True the Vote model, we want to make sure that you're not alone. We want to make sure that you're trained. And when you get in the polls, we want to make sure that 2 things. First of all, that there's a command center that if you have an issue, a problem, a worry, you can pick up the phone and call. We've done that in every location that we've been. It's very effective. You're not alone. All you have to do is make a phone call. And we staff these command centers with people who know the law in the area. We also staff them with attorneys. The other thing that we will push is what we call briefing the poll observers. We will tend to bring everybody together right before the election, and we'll have that last, here's what we've seen, here's what the issues are. We're looking at some inventive ways to do that as we get into November, where we've got over 30 states with operations, and how do we bring everybody in? Stay tuned for how we're going to do that. Lastly, I really want to underline this about support. You know, most people that volunteer Most people that volunteer are doing it for the first time. And they're not that sure of what they're going to run into, because I will tell you on the training that we give, we tell you all the horrible things that can happen to you. But the reality is, very, very few occurrences of those really happen to people. But after someone sits there and says, my goodness, if all these 12, 15 things are going to happen to me, why is it I'm volunteering to do this? Support is incredibly important, and that's why we don't put people in polls alone, and we make sure that there's a very strong support network to help them. Lastly is follow-up. We ask anyone and everyone who serves under True the Vote, direction and training, to complete what we call an incident report. If somebody breaks the law, if somebody breaks a procedure, if something doesn't go right, document it. Document it. Catherine alluded to the 1,000 people that we put in the polls in Harris County in 2010. That group of people, over the course of the election, documented over 800 individual instances of election irregularities. I use irregularities because we don't know if people did it intentionally or they just didn't know better. So for those people who say voter and election fraud doesn't exist, I've got 806 answers to that. It absolutely does in one election. So I will tell you, you create the record that debunks so much of the nonsense that says that there is no such thing as voter and election fraud. We've seen otherwise. Lastly, you want to be sure that you take the information that you get and that you pass it along to local officials. Now, are people going to get arrested and thrown in jail? Probably not. Some instances it happens. But in most cases, what you will see is two things. The first one is the local officials will change their procedures. They will change to try to prevent the things that went wrong. That's what most of them will do. And secondly, you put everybody in your county on notice that you're there and that you're going to be there, and you change their behavior. The last thing I'll say on follow-up is it's a lesson that we've learned is we go through all the training, we go through all the mobility exercise, we get people out in the polls, and then when election day is over, we're toast. And we sit back and we say, thank goodness it's over. And we will tell you story after story after story where our volunteers start to line up outside our door at 8 o'clock in the morning the day after because they want to talk to somebody about what they saw. So I will tell you that that's a very important part of this. This is the timeline. When we do the training, we'll talk more about it. Plan, mobilize, train, deploy, and follow up. The first thing people will look at that and say, oh my gosh, it's July. It's almost August. If you just kind of put your hand over and look from August forward, you'll see that every single activity would and should and could be up and operating right now. It's not too late. It's not too late. So, if you need a hand, just ask. That's what I and our team are here to do. The portal, www.truethevote.org. We're all working to figure out how to best use the portal. It is a tremendous tool. It's excellent for all of us. Email, you can reach me, bill@truethevote.org. I will respond to your emails. Some of us are sitting here sending emails back and forth to each other at 3 o'clock in the morning, so we know we will do it. Lastly, I do have a phone number, and this number is almost right. 713-401-3550. The extension is 806, not 106. But if you get through the first part of that, you'll get to us. And I will talk to you, and I will answer your questions. So, something is supposed to come up on this slide. You are part of a growing national call for election integrity. You are making history. We were astonished after 2010 that people came up to us and said, you are patriots. We said we were just trying to stand for free and fair elections. I will tell you for my own part. I asked myself a question back in early 2010, and that is this something I can do? And I decided, yes, I can learn the rules. Yes, I can go to the poll. And yes, I can withstand anything anyone is going to throw at me. The stories that I have to tell are beyond what I ever imagined. But I will tell you this. I've been in the polls ever since, and I will be in the polls in the future. The question for each of you is, where will you be this November? We are at a point where we must take back our elections. I cannot underline that enough. So please, when we have our next discussion at this time next year or before, and I ask the question, how many of you have worked in the polls? Every one of you should be able to raise your hand. Thank you very much. Now, rolling right along, and I haven't, some of you have raised your hands to ask questions. Do we have time? Okay. Yes, sir.
When I present this to someone, I want to be able to tell them what's the time frame for training. How much can they expect that it's going to be required of them time-wise?
The training courses that we go through when we have done them live, those training courses, we have one course that we take everybody through. That training course takes about an hour and a half. Now, we're putting it on demand online, and I haven't timed what the new one is going to be, but I think we'll try to keep it probably in that same type of a time frame. Once you sign up and you take this training, all right, the training is available to you anytime you want to go back and look at it. So it's there for you, and I would say anticipate probably an hour, hour and a half to actually go through and watch the training.
If I could add that, what we're doing with this training modules for the full observers is that it will be broken down into 10 chapters. So each chapter is, very depending on what it's talking about, may not be more than 10 or 15 minutes each. So you'll be able to go back, there's a certain area of that training that you're unsure of, you go back and be sure to watch that portion of it. So you can commit it as little of time, and make it work with your communities by putting it on there.
Okay, I had one other question. Yes, sir.
Bill, on your phone number, it's 712-401-3560.
3550, extension 806. 713. Yes, sir, did you have a question?
There are numerous alerts on Facebook and online that show demonstrations that are done at Raton National Laboratory and other people at other facilities that show that our machines, and I'm talking about Sequoia, ABC, which I don't know much about, Eagle machines, are totally, utterly hackable, tamperable. And you make some kind of moves to try to get a judge somewhere. But to say that you cannot use a machine that's a touchscreen where there's no paper trail. There's no paper trail, first of all, but then no election can be certified until it is ascertained that all those paper ballots match up with the numbers that come out of the machine, so that you can get some of this taken care of ahead of time instead of waiting for numerous, multiple time involved efforts afterwards to try to clean up messes that are going to be made by this tampering.
Yeah, I think the whole question and concern around election machines, most of the machines that we have today have the capability of both recording electronically and also on paper. Not all states, and this is a decision that's made at the state level, not all states use the paper feature. Texas is one of them. We have an electronic process, and while the machine that is there will actually generate a paper trail of every vote, of every input, no, we don't have that. We have some other processes that we use to try to do the double check, but the point is well made. The point is well made that these are discussions we are having across states to try to make sure that we've got that type of a backup. I think it's a very good point. Anything else? Yes, sir.
I work in the nonprofit sector, so I love to close personal to the left and hard left pretty much. And this voter suppression thing that you're talking about is hard.
Well, yeah. Certainly no disagreement. Yes, sir.
Yeah, could you address the possibility or not of video inside the polling places by volunteers?
Again, the question is, can I address the possibility of video inside the polling places? The use of recording devices, whether it's audio or video, okay, is a matter for state law. Some states allow it. Some states allow it. Most do not. Most do not. And generally, I'll tell you our experience. When we went through in 2010 and we had the 800 incidents, we came up with 22 suggested improvements to the Texas election code. We went to Austin. We met with our state legislature. 18 of those 22 were made into bills and 6 of them passed. Okay? One of them was photo ID. All right, that's been suspended by the Department of Justice. The second thing that we had is we made a number of improvements to the voter registration process. Those have also been challenged in court by an organization known as Voting for America. Voting for America is Project Vote. So the point is that you go in, you change the law. That's the point that I want to make. You can change the laws with what you do. If you want a video, you want to set that up, there are problems with that, but you can do it. You have to change your laws in order to do it, but expect that you're going to be fought every step of the way. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
How about the foreign counting of our votes? I'm hearing that this isn't going to be taking place in the United States.
The question is, how about the foreign counting of our votes? We have been following up with the secretaries of state in every state about this question. What we are learning, and we have not gotten responses from every state, but what we are learning is that in most instances, those that are using the foreign companies are not using them to count the vote. What they're using them for is to report the results afterwards. So they take the end results after the results have been counted, after the elections have been determined, and then they put together the details of how people voted in each precinct, that type of statistical information that you see. We will stay on top of that. We are concerned. We are very concerned about that, and I will tell you that every feedback that we've gotten so far says that the votes are not being counted outside of the United States and outside of the county. Okay, let me turn this over. I'll get back to my introduction slide. All right, Logan, I'm going to wish you good luck. Logan Churchwell is our Public Relations Director with True the Vote. He's the one that faces a lot of opportunities every day. So Logan, I'll turn it over to you.